So, sitting around the wood stove here trying to stay warm, and I am. It's not cold. It's not even difficult. I'm not hardly burning any wood at all. But I'm reading a book I've read many times before. Louis L'Amour, Last of the Breed. This is not the Louis L'Amour that you know. Okay, it's a different Louis L'Amour. It's a Louis L'Amour novel set in today's world. Well, in the 1980s. Louis has been gone quite a while, but it's a great story. Uh, I tell you, the person that turned me on to this story, it is not like this mountain person that's a real outdoors. Not at all. And those people know me by JJ, and she just said, JJ, you're gonna love this book. Do you like Louis L'Amour? And I said, I've read a couple of his westerns. You know, it's kind of western genre. It follows a pattern, so I'm not hugely interested. But anyway, that's a good book. And here it is, January 2022. And one of the things about January is that there is a lot of stuff that happened for some reason in Antarctica, of all places, in the month of January. And there was a bunch of anniversaries that just come up of Douglas Mawson. And if some of my videos I've talked about books. Well, Mawson's Will, which was the story of Douglas Mawson, whose 2 volumes of books from back then were the home of the blizzard. But Mawson's Will was somebody else's look at the struggle that Mawson went through. And that happened in January. And then Captain Scott and his 4 companions arrived at the South Pole to find that they did not have priority to the pole, that Roald Amundsen and his men had arrived at the pole in December. There's a whole lot of things, and there's a website in Britain that's a lot of it's all about polar exploration. And when you look back at these, it's amazing what these people went through and how they survived, and how long some of them survived, such as the men of the Franklin expedition, 138 men up in the Arctic, and in the far Arctic, where there isn't much. The Inuit people, they lived in small groups because the country could only support so many people. So they were in very small units. And they had to travel around a lot to find enough food to survive. And even still, they starved. Dave over at Dave's Real Survival, Calgary, Canada, he has his channel, Sub-Zero Books. And I thought I knew a lot about books. Well, I bought books, rare books, and collected rare books at a time when the internet really didn't exist. And by the time the internet existed, I wasn't making the money I needed to buy rare books. Well, Dave at Sub-Zero Books, he finds a lot of books, and he's turned me on to some really good books. There are so many really good books out there, and you can learn so much from them. You really can. And some of these books, they say, the critics will say, well, that's antiquated material. No, no, it's not. It's not antiquated material, not at all. And I'll stand on anybody's coffee table and say that. The guys way back, okay, right now, okay, I got this little WW stove here that I'm feeding right now. I'm trying to get the little heat going here. Okay, so you got the Winterwell titanium stoves, okay, little folding stoves. And oh man, people love them. They really do. They're just like, getting all excited about them. Well, if you go back to the early 1900s, they had folding stoves. I mean, they did. They had them. And that some people went on trips without taking a folding stove at that time was just absolutely could show that they didn't have a lot of experience. Why would you not take a wood stove on like a canoe trip across Newfoundland or Labrador? You would only not do it if you didn't have any experience. A horse packer that taught me a lot, Slim, he was a trail maintenance guy for the Forest Service. He was a horse packer for the Forest Service. He'd haul in the bridge beams and everything that they would need to build bridges where you might have to have 4 pack horses hauling these long bridge beams in. It's cool. You got to be talented to do something like that. Anyway, he turned me on to a lot of books when I was a kid. And one of the things he taught me, his shelter, when he went out horsepacking, so he can carry anything he wants, all right? He's carrying fresh food. He carries anything he wants. His shelter was what we called back then an irrigation tarp. These tarps you can buy everywhere now, the woven poly tarps. Well, those were tarps that you used to make head gates with. You'd put them on a 2x4 or whatever, and it's what you used to dam up an irrigation ditch to flood irrigate a field. Irrigation tarps. And back then they were orange. That's pretty much the color they came in. And Slim had this great big orange tarp. And he carried I think sometimes they call them a sheepherder stove. I've heard them called a Yukon stove. Anyway, they're pretty good sized wood stove, but they have no floor in them. You put them right on the ground. And Slim would do a ridge pole, and he would put the tarp over it and stake it down into just an A-frame shelter. And then he would tuck the sheepherder stove just inside the tarp with the stovepipe going up. And that's how he'd cook his fried chicken or steaks or whatever, because I went with those guys. They didn't eat dried food. They ate good food. And all the stoves, all the stuff has been around a long time. They're just making them in titanium now, and they're putting on new names and claiming the designs. They're just old designs that have been around for a long, long time. Hey, I give them credit for bringing those back and putting them into this titanium things. And this little WW stove here, it's pretty great. It really is. But they cost a lot of money. The stove has come down $100 since I bought it. I believe I bought it 2 years ago. And I have figured out their design. I figured out how to make it out of roof flashing. So you can make one for pretty cheap. But with the cost of everything going up the way it is, including roof flashing, the little WWW wood stove is a pretty decent value. I believe you can now buy it for $239. I think when I bought it, it was $329. $239. That's a good buy, because most people aren't going to have the tools to build this, and they're not going to have the skills. And the titanium will be lighter and stronger, won't burn out as fast. You get a titanium stove in the $200 plus range, you're doing well. That's something to keep in mind. But right now, I'm trying to get everything going back there again. Kind of tends to go out, and then it starts to smoke a little bit. That said, the New Way stove, N-U-W-A-Y, 2 words, New Way. It's 8 pounds. It heats a temp like you can't believe, because on the bottom of it, it has a grate that's up about that much higher. And then it's got a flap below that grate that goes like this, so that you can really get air to that flame. Whereas these stoves, they just have a single bottom, and the air has to get down through there. The New Way stove, you want something that's going to really heat your tent up. Like, you want your tent 85 degrees, the New Way stove is going to make it 85 degrees. And you're not really finding any of these lightweight tent stoves that are going to put out the heat that like the New Way will. You're not going to. It requires that space between that fire grate and where the air comes in. So when you want that fire to get going from the coals, that's what you need. Pull the little door up, air shoots through, and it starts that fire right now. But it's heavier. So, although I had the bottom of this titanium here that I've got dented all to hell now. You can't do anything with this stuff with that dent. I had it pretty red hot here earlier. You really do have to use the damper. Yeah, once you get that fire going, you got to put that damper in there, and you got to dampen that fire down. So anyway, I'm hoping that with the 100 videos that I'm making, I have something that's presentable to you folks.